That's a quote from a geologist named J. Harlan Bretz. And he was talking about a landscape in Washington state that was so strange, so alien, it just completely defied explanation. It was a place that held a pretty violent secret, a memory of a catastrophe that was almost too big to even wrap your head around. And today, we're going to explore not just that one landscape, but this whole idea that our planet is, well, it's an archive, that the Earth itself remembers its own history. I mean, that's a pretty powerful idea, isn't it? The thought that every massive flood, every asteroid impact, every sudden world-altering schist is recorded, literally written into the stone and soil right beneath our feet. The planet doesn't forget. We just have to learn how to read its memory. So to understand this, we need to learn the language of the Earth itself. And it's a language of scars and sediments, what scientists like to call geological memory. Think of it this way. Every single layer of sediment is like a page in a diary. Every canyon that was carved out by some ancient flood is a scar with a story to tell. So geological memory is basically the planet's autobiography, written not in words, but in water, rock, and a whole lot of time. But here's the thing. For a long, long time, we were reading this autobiography completely wrong. See, mainstream science was absolutely convinced that all geological change was slow, steady, gradual. It took a major shift in thinking to even begin to consider the possibility of sudden, planet-altering catastrophe. On one side, you had this idea called uniformitarianism, the belief that everything happens slow and steady, like a river gently carving a canyon over millions of years. But the evidence out in the field didn't always fit that neat little box, and that led to neocatastrophism. This is an idea that says, okay, yeah, the slow stuff happens, but our planet's history is also punctuated by these immense, violent events. And this new way of looking at things, well, it unlocked the very stories we're about to explore. All right, so let's move from the theory to the hard physical evidence. We're going to open up 3 case files where the Earth's memory of cataclysm is written for anyone to see. So this brings us back to that bizarre landscape that so baffled J. Harlan Bretz, the channeled scablands. He saw these giant ripple marks made of boulders, huge canyons that just seemed to appear out of nowhere. And his hypothesis? It was outrageous at the time. He proposed a flood of absolutely unimaginable scale. The source, he claimed, was glacial Lake Missoula, an ancient Ice Age lake that held more water than Lake Erie and Lake Ontario combined, all held back by a dam made of ice. And this is the choke point. Right here, at what is now Lake Pend Oreille in Idaho. A massive tongue of ice formed a plug, an ice dam over a kilometer high. But here's the thing about ice. It's not as strong as rock. And when the lake behind it grew deep enough, that dam would, inevitably, fail. And this wasn't a one-time event, no way. The sediment layers tell us it happened over and over again, maybe around 40 times. The dam would fail, the lake would drain in just a matter of days, and then, over the next few decades, the ice would creep forward, the dam would reform, and the lake would start to fill all over again. It was this incredible cycle of catastrophe that just kept repeating for 2,000 years. Okay, our next case file takes us beneath the waves of the North Sea, to a world that was well and truly lost, Doggerland. Now, this wasn't a myth. It was a real place, a low-lying plain that was an incredibly rich habitat for Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. For thousands of years, this was Europe's heartland. And we've actually been able to rediscover this lost world using modern tools. Seismic survey data has let archaeologists map it in just stunning detail. We can trace ancient rivers, we can find submerged lakes, and you get finds like the Otter Bank harpoon, literally dragged up by a fishing trawler. That's the tangible proof that people once called this place home. Now, rising sea levels were already slowly shrinking Doggerland, but its end was really accelerated by a catastrophe. Around 8,200 years ago, a massive underwater landslide off the coast of Norway, it's known as the Storegga slide, it triggered a ridiculously powerful tsunami. And this wave just devastated the remaining communities, delivering a final violent blow to a world that was already disappearing. Our final case brings us to the Black Sea and to one of the most compelling and, one of the most controversial theories of geological catastrophe out there. The hypothesis, which was put forward by scientists William Ryan and Walter Pittman, is that the Black Sea was once a giant freshwater lake, totally isolated and sitting far below sea level. And then, the dam broke. So this is the central question, right?
Did the rising Mediterranean Sea breach the natural rock barrier at the Bosphorus, unleashing a torrent of saltwater that catastrophically flooded this freshwater lake and all the land surrounding it?
Now, science is rarely ever totally settled, and there is a really vigorous debate here. While the catastrophic flood hypothesis is incredibly powerful, some geologists argue for a much more gradual inflow model, where the connection was slow and gentle. Both sides have evidence, and it just goes to show how complex it can be to read the Earth's memory accurately. But the evidence for a sudden, catastrophic deluge is pretty hard to ignore. When Ryan and Pittman pulled these sediment cores from the bottom of the Black Sea, they found a really stark transition. Lying directly on top of an old, dried-out land surface with freshwater shells was a thick layer of marine mud. It's a geological snapshot of a moment of profound and incredibly sudden change. And this physical record in the mud, it leads us to a fascinating question. If these kinds of catastrophes displaced thousands upon thousands of people, is it possible that their memory survived? Not in stone, but in stories? The timeline here is just fascinating. The proposed Black Sea flood happens almost 9,000 years ago. So for nearly 5,000 years, the story could have only survived through oral tradition, passed from one generation to the next. Then, once writing is invented, it gets recorded in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and later it finds its way into the Book of Genesis. It's just a hypothesis, of course, but it's a powerful one. It suggests that our deepest, most foundational myths might actually be a form of cultural memory, of real geological events. So, what do we do with this knowledge of catastrophe? I mean, it can be pretty unsettling, but maybe we should try to reframe it. These events aren't just endings. They are violent, powerful resets. You can see the cycle pretty clearly. First, a stable world exists. Then, a cataclysm strikes, and that world collapses. But this collapse isn't the end of the story. A new landscape is forged from the event, and life, human and otherwise, adapts, creating something entirely new from the ruins of the old. When you get down to it, these floods were forces of creation just as much as they were destruction. They sculpted the world we see today, they pushed our ancestors across the globe, and they may very well have given us the epic stories that helped us make sense of a dynamic and, let's be honest, a sometimes violent world. We've learned to read the planet's memory, etched in ancient rock and mud. And it kind of forces us to look at our own world, doesn't it? At our own rising seas and melting ice, and ask a pretty sobering question. If the Earth truly remembers every catastrophe, what stories of our time will it tell?